Welcome back to the Purchase Broadcast Studios. I'm your host, Arlenis Marmolejos, and today we're diving into an exciting student-led project taking shape right here on campus. A major revitalization is underway at Southside, the versatile theater and performance venue located in the Campus Center South building. Primarily used for student events, Southside is being reimagined into a flexible, multifunctional space that can host everything from plays and concerts to community gatherings and student films. The transformation began with committee meetings and a community cleanup on March 31st, where volunteers rolled up their sleeves to clear trash and repurpose forgotten items. Promoted by the Arts Management Club, the project aims to establish Southside as a vibrant third space for student expression and collaboration. This spring, the team has tackled foundational tasks like organizing equipment and making strides to create a backstage area. Over the summer, planning for larger collaborative upgrades will begin, with implementation set for the fall. Looking ahead to spring 2026, students plan to seek funding to continue expanding the venue's potential. Joining me here today to talk about the vision behind this transformation are Amanda Wenner, who's leading the initiative, and Pinky Poodles, a student performer familiar with the Southside stage. Let's hear how the student-driven effort is reshaping campus culture and what it means for the future of the arts at Purchase. How are you both doing today?
Doing good.
Okay, cool. So let's start at the beginning. Amanda, what initially sparked your commitment to revitalize the Southside campus? And how did the project begin?
So I was running a show in there last fall, and that's when I started to notice how dysfunctional the space was, especially being in there over multiple weeks. Things kind of change every time you're in there. And then this past fall, I was in there again doing another project, and because it was a bit of a bigger project, we put more focus on cleaning up the space and trying to make it functional for us, and that kind of led to me trying to make it functional for everyone else too.
Awesome. And building on that, now that the project is in motion, could you describe what actions you've been doing, what efforts?
Yeah, so really it's been a lot of cleanup, and because it's a THP space, they ultimately have like the authority over the space, and the department's going through a lot of turnover right now, so Southside is kind of on the back burner. So mostly just cleaning up in there, but then trying to connect to faculty members and faculty groups to get them to have some stake in the game in the venue in the future.
Yeah, and what are you looking forward to for Southside? What, if you can name any efforts you'd like to do over the summer or anything you'd want to elaborate on that maybe you couldn't do this semester?
Yeah, I think like the obvious things are funding to try to get it to be physically redone, to have functional audio in there and lights that work for multiple different types of events, because right now it's kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of different dysfunctional equipment. And a lot of students bring in their own equipment for parties and things because the stuff that's in there just really doesn't work. But that's not entirely in our control. So I would love for there to be like an arts management internship created for students to help kind of maintain the space and manage it, because right now there's no turnover between different people being in there.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And let's shift over to Pinky Poodles. So you've actually performed at Southside.
That's
so
correct.
What was that experience like?
Well, before any revitalization has been made to the space, I would say that a lot of the equipment is provided by the students, which can be a problem. I think one of the best things about Whitson's and the Stud is that there are actively people who are working sound there, and that they have high quality equipment that is always available in the Stud for the Stud. I think one of the biggest problems with Southside is that there's always a continuous sense of it not being the most important space. I mean, in the past when we've booked it, we get there and the door's locked, and we have to call UPD to open the door. That's the only way to get in. That would never happen with the Stud or with Whitson's. You know, it's time and time again I see with Southside is that there's a lot of potential, but a lot of potential that's not being harnessed. And I think that it's actually, in my opinion, a better space for a lot of students. The biggest difference for Southside being something that any student can book through Roombook. There's nobody that you're going through. Yes, there's the people within the actual who own the space, but beyond that, I think that it's something that people who aren't necessarily music students or people who just want to have a show would be able to use and have access to, which is also why it's important that we create some kind of internship program to make sure that everything is running as it should, because that's another big problem. The lack of understanding of the equipment and the gear. Oftentimes, nobody knows how to turn on the lights. There's giant speakers in there that everyone's like, why aren't you using those speakers? Because nobody knows how to use them.
Yeah.
So.
And Amanda, how do you feel about what Pinky Poodles said? What do you have any ideas of how to fix that? Of what else to add, whether that's regarding equipment or what else?
Yeah, I mean, for renovations in the future, there is a sound hookup to those big speakers. It comes outside the wall and the wires are through a pool noodle. And they're all kind of frayed, and it hooks into a sound mixer. So you have to hook into a sound mixer outside of the booth and on the opposite side of the space than the lighting booth. So when you're doing a concert or a theatrical production, you're having now two people on the opposite sides of the space that need good sight lines to what's happening in the space. That, and it's, again, just frayed wires coming out of a pool noodle in the wall. So they're in real disrepair, and there's not a ton of control over what you can do with that equipment. And unlike the Stude, there's nothing like mics or mic stands or any sort of equipment to set up an event. And yeah, what's so ironic about the space is it's usually unlocked, and then whenever you have a room booked, you gotta call and wait about 20 minutes for them to come over and unlock it, because it doesn't have a key card that they can give you access remotely. Like that, I think, would even be a small improvement that could make it a little bit easier to get in.
And is there a budget at all? How have you been working with a committee, or have you been working with the Arts Management Club to revitalize the space?
Yeah, right now it's been all volunteer just to clean out the space. To kind of put money into something that we don't know what's going to happen to it in the future, because we don't have that oversight and authority, is a little tricky thing to manage. I would love to just put mic stands in there, but one of the biggest problems about Southside is because there's no one managing it, turning it over, there's no storage, there's no lockup. A lot of people go in there and they don't know if things are current or have been left there from events in the past, or if something's a personal item or a prop. Something we ran into last semester, I had a show in there. We had flats that were all painted and ready to go, and some people threw a party in there for the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight. And we ended up having holes that were like punched through our set pieces because people didn't, I guess, realize that those things were being currently used by students.
And what is done about those equipment, like the equipment and the space itself? Is there any funding, or does the school provide any help in terms of janitorial or just help with cleanup?
I mean, no. Yes and no, because of course a faculty member could put in a work order to have something done, but it's not a space that's their biggest priority. It being a THP space, a lot of THP projects and senior projects are in the Humanities Theater or CMFT, which have a lot more oversight from the department, whereas Southside is kind of a graveyard of old things. And there were even these giant metal lighting rigs that used to be in Humanities that were dumped into the Southside space. So it just kind of, it's like the little sister to Humanities that just gets all the hand-me-downs, but no one's actually putting those things to use or cleaning up the space. So we had to put a work order in to get these giant poles moved out, because people kept having them stand upright, and they were about like 30 feet long and really heavy metal things that were not meant to be stood up. They're meant to be rigged to the ceiling. And I was in there one time and one just fell over and toppled on a bunch of stuff. So also a lot of just safety issues in there, because there's no one making sure the space itself is safe.
And Pinky Poodles, how do you feel about that as a performer, as like in terms of Southside and just the revitalization efforts, or maybe what you've heard and seen in the past? How would you feel safe as a performer in that space?
Well, I think that a big thing, like I said, the big thing is the access of the space itself. I think that it is imperative. I think from the shows that we've had there, the placement of the actual venue is crucial, especially being that we leave the door open and you start playing music and people hear it and they come on in because it's inviting, you know.
Yeah.
But I noticed that there's just a giant pile of chairs and tables and like everything, like all over the place. There's no organization whatsoever. And you know, it's not just music performances that are done there. It's also used, I know, by the Rocky Horror Picture Show Club, and I know that they also have a lot of plays there. But like, it's like I said before, everybody has to provide their own backline. It's not like they have access to a backline there. I think revitalizing the space would definitely be very helpful, especially for people who need access to an easy space like that, you know. And I think that, like I said, there's a lot of potential. I don't know, in regards to the safety issues, I think that a lot of it can be very easily fixed. I don't think it takes a lot, you know, to patch up holes in the walls and patch up. I haven't heard about the 30-foot poles, but that doesn't really surprise me. You know, I think that. Oh, that's another thing as well. What you were saying with the set having holes found in it. I think that anybody can get access to it, which is great, but that's also why it needs to be managed better. I think the same way that you wouldn't be able to get away with that in the Stude, you shouldn't be able to get away with that in Southside. You know, there should be somewhere to lock up things, and there should be somebody who's actively watching over the space, who is either involved with arts management or involved with Southside itself. Whether it's a student or an adult, you know, most likely a student. But, and also another thing is there should be people who are working sound. It shouldn't just be students who are expected to figure it out, you know, because when you do that, you open up the door for more issues, because it's very easy for them to break expensive equipment like that.
I've known people who have had their entire lighting cues for shows deleted because people turn off the lighting board improperly. People don't know how to use the stuff in there. Those audio cords that I was talking about, they come out of the wall and sit on the floor. There's no cable management system, so people will often put things up against that wall and on top of those cords, which only further damages them. And so students bring in their own lights and their own sound, and for a single event or a single night event like a party, that's a little more accessible. But even so, you're talking about lugging hundreds or thousands of dollars of equipment across campus into a separate space and then lugging that out. And if you were to do that every night for a theater performance throughout tech and shows, that makes the space now completely inaccessible.
And no, I truly understand what you both mean. And as a performer, and even behind the scenes in management, it's imperative to have these changes fixed for campus. And I'd love to just close out by asking, what does a revitalized Southside venue mean to you, culturally and artistically on campus? And we could start with Amanda. What does it mean to you to revitalize Southside?
Yeah, I think, like Pinky was saying, having a space that's more accessible to people who aren't in a specific program or club or organization. The Stude's programming kind of has a hierarchy they have to follow, where it's like campus and major events and then legacy events from clubs, and then it goes through to campus artists. So campus artists are kind of at the bottom of that totem pole, just unfortunately within their programming. And having a space that those students can then perform in means a lot. And likewise with more theatrical performances, because the bigger theaters on campus are so overly utilized for senior projects already, having a space where someone can put on an independent project means a lot to people doing theater who might want to do something just for themselves and something that doesn't have the oversight of their department or needs to be run as a senior project is run.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
Pinky Poodles, do you have anything else to add about how you feel, what it means to you that Southside would be revitalized?
Yeah, I think that one of the greatest things, especially in regards to Purchase artists and musicians, is I think that there is this sense of DIY to it. As a matter of fact, the other day I was at a show in Queens at a venue called Bar Frida, and I met the members of this band called Lost Dog, and I told them I was a Purchase student, and they were also Purchase students. They graduated in 2014. And I actually talked to them about Southside because I was talking about this interview, and they said that it was exactly the same. They gave the same exact description from when they were going here in 2014 to what it is now. So this venue has been the same thing for a long time. And I think opening up the possibility for more DIY spaces that are managed correctly allows a lot of students to really excel within their artistic craft. And like I said, it's not just musicians, you know, it's also clubs. I think that there's many clubs on campus that can be opened, which would be heavily reliant on the space. And I think that there could be clubs that are currently on campus that can benefit greatly from an organized Southside.
Yeah, I hear you, and I understand absolutely. Thank you so much to Amanda Wenner and Pinky Poodles for joining us and sharing their insights on the Southside venue revitalization. That's all for today's segment. Thank you for tuning in from all of us here at Purchase Broadcast Studios. I'm your host, Arlenis Marmolejos, and see you next time.